Serious, people who check university applications. What do students tend to ignore put in that would otherwise increase their chances of acceptance? I didn't work in admissions, but I have worked in billing financial aid. They're under the same branch, enrollment management, so we had to go to a lot of the same events seminars. At one point, we learned that some students don't realize that financial aid is a possibility for them. Students coming from difficult backgrounds at huge schools with maybe one guidance counselor per 100 plus students don't get the help they need when applying. I definitely understand that a student might not see the point in telling the difficult story of their lives, but it can really help your chances in many ways. All we have to go on to learn about you is that essay. If you've got average grades, no extracurriculars, and you write a generic essay about how you've always wanted to be in such and such career, you're less likely to be noticed. Don't be afraid to personalize your application. If you let the admissions team know that you were working 2 jobs after school to help your family pay rent, that really says a lot about you. We can read between the lines and see that's why your application may not be stellar in other areas. As a former billing counselor, I want to throw in some extra things here. 1. Don't be afraid to apply to your dream school just because you can't afford it. They may be able to give you more help than you realize. 2. That said, if you do get into your dream school, but the financial stars aren't aligning, really weigh your options before you take on that extra debt. You can transfer in from another school to save money. My college even specifically partnered with another and gave those students transfer aid, which typically wasn't a thing. Really research your options. Some colleges, like mine, a private school, won't give aid to transfers, only those coming in as freshmen. But that could still mean savings in the end. Others are fine with transfer aid, and it's okay to ask them about it. A degree is what you make it. I wish that I could have said this to every student and parent who cried to me that private college I worked at was their dream school, and can't we please give them more financial aid? We didn't have more aid to give. Please, think about your future. On more than one occasion, I witnessed a student turning down a large scholarship to another college for little to no aid from us because dream school. I couldn't tell them not to do that, so I'm telling you. Please, a degree is what you make it. Look at your other options. The strongest bit of advice for students applying to a European, particularly UK university course: don't send a US-style personal statement. Applications in the US tend to be handled by admin staff, whereas in the UK/EU by academic staff. These academic staff do not want to read several pages on your non-academic interests and skills. It's a waste of their time. Focus entirely on your subject-based interest and experience. It's often not even worth saying why you want to attend that particular uni on a UK application, unless it's due to the strength of the department or the teaching staff on the course you are actually taking. Thank God, haha. I thought my PS was completely irrelevant until I realized that the majority of these posts are for American unis. Whoa, I can answer this since I work in American higher education. For graduate school, recommendations are absolutely crucial, so be very careful with who you pick. It's normally the first thing universities look at. I recommend someone who will write passionately but honestly about you. It can sometimes be helpful to send your writer your resume and essay submissions as well, and if they're willing to look at and incorporate those documents, they are probably a good writer for you. Also, self-advocacy is key for your essay submissions, so don't be afraid of coming off as bragging. A lot of students try to be humble, or even vague, which hurts their application since admissions doesn't have time to interpret their essay. If you have any specific questions about applications, feel free to ask me. Alright, so I went to a university, private Catholic college, very freaking expensive. I took a work study in admissions, and I handled putting in transcripts, letters, ACSAT, etc., etc. The number one thing that kids like to just wimp out on is recommendations. They saved so many asses when it came to kids being accepted. For example, Kid 1 has a 2.6 GPA, 21 ACT, has a great recommendation from a teacher who explains their struggles or their constant growth, anything flattering that isn't too over the top. Kid 2 has a 2.9 GPA, 23 ACT, has a generic recommendation sheet from a counselor, usually just a blank sheet with someone basic info, only a simple recommendation signature from a counselor. You would not believe how many times the school would pick Kid 1. Having a personal educator saved them and got them admitted over someone slightly better in terms of academics. The character is looked at a lot by universities. Fun story, a kid got denied because he didn't get a recommendation letter. He sent a letter and that was like pornographic in nature, smutty and just gross. I didn't get to read it sadly. Poor girl was the one who got it. He had to come and apologize face to face to everyone. Even though he lived like 400 miles away, his mom knew he wouldn't get reconsidered even if he apologized. She just wanted to make him eat crap for it. I have a lot of other stories about crazy admissions, haha. UK uni admin here. Spell check and check your grammar. People often forget to answer the most important question. What do you want to study and why? You'll be surprised how many personal statements I read that are full of fantastic achievements etc. But none of that matters if I can't tell what you're applying for. Also, lots of people put in all their wonderful extracurriculars but often neglect to mention work experience. This might just be a personal preference of mine, but I think it shows that you are a well-rounded individual who can work hard, take responsibility, and who is a little more mature. I think it's important as these are valuable attributes to have when attending university and being away from home for the first time. We are looking for well-rounded students after all, which doesn't just mean being able to play the trumpet and tap dance. I work in the admissions office of my school. Improper emails, misspellings, terrible handwriting all make us critical of whatever you're going to say next. The thing that agitated me the most, however, and probably the people at the actual decisions, is your level of research on your career. Elementary school math teacher is not what you put in the blank for major. Education is a major. It's astounding how many potential students don't do research before applying. Last week we had an applicant that wanted to go to the NFL. We don't have a football team. Submit your application online. I work in admissions and getting paper applications is not only annoying but it slows down the whole process. For one, the amount of spelling errors is alarming and we end up having to call people to see how the correct way to spell their first name. Second, as much as it sucks, sometimes paper apps get lost, get lots in the mail, doesn't get filed properly. Things just move a lot quicker online. I wasn't aware people still use mail in applications. Common App has really spoiled me. I've worked in admissions to an undergrad honors program. Humor is fine, but morbid humor is generally hit or miss. I'm scanning your recommendations for actual examples of your awesomeness, as everything is generally going to be boilerplate best ever, so if your recommendations have a particularly example, he wrote an essay that made me cry, he was the fastest at whatever, he always stayed to help after, it's helpful. Remind your recommenders of these moments before. Also on recs, I've read some real bad ones. Every once in a while there is a person who asked the wrong teacher. If a teacher seems reluctant, do not take their rec, ask someone else. I'm expecting you to have reasonably good grades, so I'm probably scanning your grades for mistake grades that you need to explain elsewhere. Why did you get that D? What classes are your weaker classes if you got below a C in a class? You probably need to explain that to me. Let someone read your essays for cringe. Please don't write an essay about how a 2-day volunteer trip changed your life unless you actually started volunteering everywhere else, created an NGO for that cause after. I'd rather hear more about your life and activities, hobbies as a whole. Please, if you're going to exaggerate, don't make it something which is basically a lie. If you choose to write the diversity essay, be careful and sensitive with what you say. For graduate school, I've sat on an admissions board here, field specific to social science. The rec thing above times a billion more. Don't just go for a big name if they don't know you. He will write you a 1-paragraph crap rec. Your statement of purpose should display 1. Your research interest, 2. How you've previously done work with it, 3. Who exactly you will work with. Depending on the school, you can and should reach out to professors to discuss with them, especially in smaller schools. Rewrite your statement of purpose over and over, without side eyes. If you are in undergrad, the career office will and should help you with this. Submit everything on time. Yes, your grade counts. Yes, That sucks. If your grade is below a certain threshold, if your GPA is below a certain threshold, if your recs were less than glowing, or if your SOP was less than well matched, any of these alone can disqualify you depending on the school. I ended up working for the admissions office partly due to my own application, so I'll throw my own experience in. Everyone is right. Write something about yourself. When I was in high school we were given an assignment to write our application essays and mine was about dealing with depression and suicidal thoughts, and learning to be a better person and accept my faults and help others who struggle too. My teacher hated it. She said no way, it's too negative. But I felt it represented myself, so I submitted it. I ended up winning a competitive scholarship because they picked out my essay, which helped me get a job at the university. Anyways, I always looked for other students who felt like they took the time to really try their best even if it wasn't the greatest writing or most interesting subject. They want people who at least try and seem like genuine thoughtful students. It's better than copy pasting some generic story about how great you are. TLDR. Be honest, nobody is perfect. You're not wrong, but that is a very risky game. I used to work for a college women's hockey team. Part of my job was sorting the letters to the head coach from prospective players. If it was obvious it was a form letter, especially stuff like mentioning the wrong school coach, you automatically went to the bottom of the pile. 1. A surprisingly large number of essays include obvious typos and grammar issues. Use spell check, read your essay aloud, and have a few other people read it to check for errors. I want to know that you're taking this application seriously. 2. Give me a sense of who you are. What makes you different than your peers? What would make you an interesting member of my college's community? I want to see some personality. It's not strictly necessary, but it helps me understand you and why you're a good candidate compared to the other couple of dozen applicants I'm reviewing today. 3. If there are problematic areas in your application, for example, some bad grades or weak extracurricular activities, give me some context. I want to understand why you're still a good candidate. I really want to admit you. As a college, we need the tuition and financial aid money you can provide, and we can't get that unless you're admitted and enroll. So explain those bad grades or other problems that might make me think you would struggle in college. Be careful not to shrug off responsibility for your own actions, though. Ideally, I want to see you take ownership of your struggles and that you've learned from them, with evidence that you've improved. Show your effort in any way you can. This doesn't mean to try those gimmicks or to pester the school with unsolicited materials, but do take advantage of every single opportunity and option they offer. Don't just do the standard or minimum amount of effort if you can do more. I was barely accepted to a top-tier liberal arts college, my first choice school, and I know with certainty that I only barely made it. I was put on the waitlist in April, when all the acceptances go out. The waitlist comes with an invitation to update your application with new material, but most kids check the yes, waitlist me box and don't bother to add any updates. I studied hard my last semester and got my best grades ever, took more AP tests. I continued with my extracurricular activities, advanced to a higher level belt level in Taekwondo, kept volunteering at the hospital, got an extra teacher's recommendation letter, wrote an extra essay, and I sent all that into the school in May. In July, I was sent a letter from First Choice College, which gave me the option to remain on a summer wait list. I have never heard of this before, and haven't heard of it since, but I figured, what's the harm? I sent the form back with a yes. And meanwhile I registered at my second choice school and prepared to attend there the last week of August. In mid-August, as I was almost ready to head off to college for orientation, I was researching transfer options and looked up First Choice School online. I saw that they offered transfer applications, but they weren't on the site yet, so I sent in a basic email to the admissions office asking, when will your transfer applications be available for the upcoming year? I kid you not. The next morning I got a call from admissions, who said, we got your transfer request, but actually, a spot just opened up for the fall. Do you want to take it? I was so shocked that I almost couldn't answer her, but I told her emphatically yes. They FedExed my information. I withdrew from second choice school, and 10 days later, I was on a plane to first choice college, where I graduated 4 years later. While at that college, I worked at admissions and got to know the deans well. Almost assuredly, my extra efforts were what gained me entry. Apparently a girl had gotten into a car accident 2 weeks before orientation, and they were going to leave the slot empty, but I just happened to pop up. They saw that I was on the wait list, that I'd updated my application, and with the transfer question, I clearly really wanted to go to their school, so I got in. You'd be surprised how often people use a copy and pasted response to questions, or even their entire admission letter. You can have the best application ever seen, but your chances drop instantly if your admission letter for University X still says for these reasons and so many more. I believe University Y is the perfect fit for me. Okay, so go to University Y. Application rejected. I guess this is just at select institutions. I worked in an admissions office for 8 years and the institution I worked at just cared if you had the correct high school credits, GPA, test scores, no criminal record. If you met that you were admitted, and many times even if you did not you still get in. Funding was based on numbers, so they didn't give a rat's butt about you or your ambitions. Hi there, I'm a former admissions officer for a private liberal arts college. If the school you're applying to take the Common App, try your best to make it stand out with unique stories or big dreams you have. Admissions officers receive tens of thousands of Common Apps every year, and many of these admissions officers are bored of reading about your 4.0 and involvement in 17 different leadership groups. Our office wants to know why you should get a chance at a stellar secondary education, not why you're already such a smart cookie. We want to put the best and brightest people in a position to succeed for the rest of their life. And as most people know here, grades and clubs mean nothing after graduation. A good way to address this within the Common App essay: what have you experienced in your life that made you try to enact a change, better yourself, or cause deep reflection? Some examples that I read about include a woman who used her popularity as homecoming queen to organize a school-wide flood cleanup effort, a former athlete whose career-ending injury made him look into his true passion of astronomy, and a programmer who at age 23 wanted so badly to start his own company, but wanted to take management courses to round himself out. Oh, and of course, spell check, spell check, spell check. Have someone else read your essay for you. Read it out loud in front of a mirror. Make sure the grammar works verbally too. You're going to be okay. Best of luck to everyone currently working on their applications. Finally, something I can answer about my work. I assist with admissions for a graduate program at a large university, 40,000 plus student population. Our program sees over 400 applications per year. First an online application, and then we do in-person interviews. You're probably doing most things right when applying. Spell checking your submissions. Make sure your references are strong, meet all the requirements, etc. Things you don't want to do. Make yourself stand out in a negative way. Any applicant who doesn't submit docs on time, whose interactions with staff are rude, negative, pushy, including reception. We note and keep track of all of that, and you will not be getting an interview, despite what your GPA may be. If you waited until 2 weeks before the submission deadline to ask a referee to send a letter and they didn't get around to it, don't call and ask for additional time. There's a deadline and it was your responsibility to meet it. Didn't like the answer you got to an emailed question? Don't come in after seeing our note that we don't do in-person advising, and try and pressure staff into giving you a different answer. Don't, for the love of God, have your parent call or come in on your behalf. There are privacy laws for a reason, and we don't want a student who can't ask their own questions. Ensure if your documents reached us. Don't call or email to ask about them. Read the instructions we listed that stated to check your online application, as all updates will be made there and that we won't take call to confirm. Don't ask to speak to the department head or an admissions committee member because you have a unique situation. We note everything. We receive enough applications from students who exceed all of our minimum requirements that we can't afford to be extremely picky. The people who do stand out are the ones who did everything that was asked of them, submitted all documents on time, met and completed all requirements, didn't come in when we said not to, didn't make a fuss, were passionate, enthusiastic and had a positive interaction to everyone they interact with. Don't just be a resume filler. 1 year in the environmental club, 1 year in the history club, 1 year in the robotics club, etc. shows you're just trying to con your way in. Find something you really enjoy and stay devoted to it. Show why you're willing to put in work for something you care about, not just go through the emotions. Part-time jobs. In this day and age, a lot of kids go to college never having held a job. If you did have a part-time job and can get a letter of recommendation from your boss, responsible, hardworking, gets along well with others, reliable, honest, it goes a long way. I'm a student who works for admissions, so I don't technically decide whether or not you get in, but I do have a good tip. I'm from a state, hint, it's Delaware, where there is a heavy emphasis on test optional submissions, especially for in-state students, and lots of people think that they will just ignore the test scores and judge you without them. While this is true, this puts you at a heavy disadvantage with the admissions team. They look at test optionals last, so if they've already gotten close to their admissions quota, they will be much more scrupulous, and it'll be harder to get in. Their logic is that if you don't submit your test scores, you either don't test well, or aren't smart enough for the university, which is unfortunate. So if you want to submit test optional to a certain large university in Delaware, please only do it if you've got a great GPA, a large amount of extracurriculars, and recommendations from teachers administrators. Even mediocre test scores are better than no test scores, it seems. Oh yay, one I can answer. Hope I'm not too late to the party. Anyways, I used to work in the admissions office for an art school. We really only required transcripts and your portfolio, or audition for performing arts, essays. Test scores and even letters of recommendation were optional and really didn't matter as much. This one person decided to bombard us with 10+ letters of recommendation and a 3-page acting resume with glitter and stickers and big picture of themselves. Pro tip: if your application materials explode glitter on my desk, I won't care who you played in your high school rendition of Hamlet. People prepare their entire application, including essays, without giving even the slightest indication of why they are applying to the college, graduate school, or what they hope to gain from the experience. Some people write excellent essays outlining their achievements or their goals, but they never take the next step and explain how the college or graduate program will help them build on their achievements or attain their goals. If you don't tell me why you will benefit from matriculation, you are forcing me to make my own determination of whether you would benefit and, more importantly, whether you would benefit more than other applicants. Tell me why you want to attend Program X, how it will help you achieve your goals, and what you will contribute to Program X. Hi there, I have worked in admissions for 6 years. Honestly, it's purely ignorance that hurts students the most at most universities. Typos, spelling errors, and grammatical errors jump out the most, but I have seen many students reuse essays for multiple schools and forget to replace important info. Know the deadlines, know the criteria, know what we need and make sure you meet those. If you are applying to a school where you are around or over the mean, you're fine. Supplementary advice: put yourself in the place of the admissions reader. Just imagine how many apps you have to read. Imagine how boring they are. Imagine how many sound like clones. Imagine how many times you have to see the same adjectives. Imagine how happy you are when an original one comes along. In other words, personalize your app. Make it serious, but fun. Show how distinct and creative you are. Basically, what you want to demonstrate is that you are smart, creative, and above all else, that you will contribute something positive and unique to the university community. Grading thousands of college papers each year, I cannot tell you how happy I am when I see someone who thinks differently, who takes the assignment seriously, has fun with it, and who doesn't just offer up the routine stuff. Good luck. I've done admissions for undergraduate and graduate programs at a couple of different universities. Honestly, a lot of what I see could be fixed with more time and care on the application. We'd get calls from students asking, "This says I need freshman comp. Does tech writing count?" Look, go you for asking. But if it says freshman comp, that's what's needed, and yeah, you might need to go back and take another class. If you need 3 letters of rec, provide 3. If one needs to be from a boss, don't get it from a professor. Start your application early enough that you're not rushing it at the deadline and turning in a mediocre application. You're not helping yourself by getting in a hurry and missing things you'd have caught otherwise. If you're too late this cycle to carefully complete the application, wait, get in on the next cycle, and work or volunteer in near your field while you do that. We remember who turned in a sloppy, half-done application package last cycle, and it will absolutely set you back a little on the next. Not a lot, but if you're trying for a spot in a prestigious program, it might be just enough to keep you out. Finally, and this is important, I don't care if you have to get a restraining order or something. Do not let your parents call the university about anything to do with your application. It's not about them. You're freaking grown up and it's your job to deal with the admissions office. Ask questions if you're stuck, and meet the appropriate deadlines. Nothing murders someone's application faster than a grown but adult's parents calling and bugging us about said grown but adult's college application. I am in charge of a medical residency program in the US and see hundreds of personal statements each year. To be clear, these are students graduating from medical school, entering residency specialization. Obviously the personal statements I am seeing are from people who have generally been very successful in academics and have then done well in medical school compared to their peers. There is nothing in the personal statement that I find will make me think you will be a good fit. The greatest narcissist can write about humility. The least interested in becoming an expert in the field can make themselves seem the most interested, and so on. What I look for in a personal statement is really to put your objective shortcomings in perspective. In other words, somewhat lower scores in the context of frequently volunteering and free clinics and being overall engaged in something other than studying allows me to have some confidence that they can study to the point of expertise all while working 80 hours a week and studying hours on top of that. Also, any issues in the application absolutely need to be addressed here. Failed class, bad board exam score, etc. Or the worst will be assumed. Finally, the other thing I look for in a personal statement is something, anything, to talk to you about on the interview. Something that makes you, not unique, but well-rounded and human. The college application process seems to focus too heavily on whether you play a fossilized ancient Japanese harp last played 500 years ago and less on what really matters: work ethic, ability, and emotional maturity. I see a generation of applicants that think their extracurricular activities, odd hobbies, and flowery language will be of some value when taking care of other people's sons, daughters, fathers, mothers. Okay, not sure why I went on such a rant, but the thought of there being such a thing as a consultant to help you write a personal statement leads me to believe the intent of it has lost its utility. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.